All right, welcome to our special Halloween edition or trade deadline edition of our War Media Bears coverage. Today, it's all about trick or treat, and the way I see it, the Bears have a lot of treats when it comes to draft picks and cap space. I am Saul Rodriguez. I am joined by Lakeena McGee, who you can watch on Sports Zone Chicago with Sydney Brown. I'm also joined by Ryan Bukovetsky, who you can watch on our pre and post Bears coverage. We'll start with you, Lakeena. How are you doing on this Halloween night?
Oh, I'm feeling a little trick or treat, gentlemen. How are you?
We're good.
It's
I'm doing really, really good. How about you, Ryan?
here in Vegas, we still got some light out, so it's not quite spooky quite yet, but we're gearing up. I'm seeing the costume starting to pour out a little bit.
Yeah, but I've noticed that too, especially in the Midwest, right? It's like it hits like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, starting to get darker. It gets a little like spooky, and then yeah, it's just yeah, I did definitely like that.
Wait till
One
But
little
oh, go
fun
ahead.
note. One little fun note out here that I found out. I guess because of, just the if you just like think of literally the curvature of the earth and how we get like more light out here on like the west coast, they don't really have a cap for when trick-or-treating ends like it does in the Midwest. I was like,
Oh
dang,
yeah,
these kids are
oh
living
yeah.
up out here.
Oh.
That's true. You can go up until like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock
Yep.
compared to here. A lot of people, a
Right.
lot of kids are probably at home. It's 7 o'clock here. It's probably kids are probably
Yep.
already home. So
Yeah, I'm gonna
that's
say a
Yeah,
true.
lot of
exactly.
Yeah.
yeah. Just wait till
Uh,
daylight savings time, or it's gonna be getting dark at like 4:30.
Oh
I don't know if
God.
I don't
oh
Yeah.
know if it's
man.
yeah, yeah. Get ready for those days, boys.
Oh man. Yeah.
That was the scariest thing you've said, Lakeena, right there.
Oh man! All right, so we'll get into it. There was a big trade today, and it was Roquan Smith was traded to the Baltimore Ravens. Now I'm gonna break it down exactly what the Bears got and what the Ravens got. So the Bears received the second and fifth round draft picks from the Ravens, along with linebacker AJ Klein, and the Ravens get Roquan Smith. And the Bears are also paying $4.8 million of Smith's contract, and Baltimore's paying 575. That's per Adam Schefter. But yeah, just your guys' initial thoughts of the trade. We'll start with you, Ryan. Like, what did you think as soon as you heard about this?
I guess I was a little surprised just because Roquan, even though he's been kind of inconsistent at this new position, I think we saw all the physical traits. He's very young still, obviously only on his fifth year of his rookie deal. So, it made a lot of sense to keep him and have him be one of those really important players. And I'm a little bit worried about replacing someone like that versus like a Robert Quinn when you're talking kind of mid 30s, kind of been a journeyman, kind of takes a year off here and there. You didn't necessarily feel like that guy was in the future, but Roquan, you do. Now, at the same time, I think the Bears are in a great position moving forward, especially if Fields continues this kind of like upward trend. I mean, I was just kind of talking about in the We Are Regal Radio kind of group chat. They're still in potential for quarterback trade haul where you might get a ton of draft picks just from somebody wanting to draft a Bryce Young or any of those other top-notch quarterbacks. And now with all the cap space, with all the draft picks, all the capital, I mean, they can really reshape their team. But now you got to execute in scouting and finding the right guys, and especially now losing one of your best, most talented players.
Just piggybacking off what you said, Ryan, about for what I've seen on Twitter and on Facebook and other everywhere on Bear social media, people are not very happy for the most part. I think 80%, probably are not very pleased with this trade. And for me, I said, oh, okay, they actually did pull the trigger. So, I understand why they did that, because if they had franchise tag, that would have been what, about 20 million or a little over 20 million. So that would have been, it might, Ryan Poles probably felt it was too much for his blood. So he said, you know what, let me trade him, try to get some of the value. The Ravens had a lot of picks in the next couple of years. So even if I say, we'll spare them, second and fifth round. I know I've seen some people say that, both, one fleeced the other, but I think they both, got what they wanted. The Bears got draft capital. The Ravens got a front seven guy, which they desperately need up for their defense. So I think it's good all around. Now, as far as like you said, Ryan, with the draft picks, they got 9 draft picks right now and 125 million in cap space as of as we're recording this. as Jimmy Johnson said years ago, now it worked for him in Dallas, but getting the capital and getting the inventory is one thing. You just got to make sure you pick the right players, and that's really going to be the Poles' big test.
Yeah, no, Lakeena, make a good point. We were talking about this before. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was just gonna piggyback off that. At least
Mm.
we're seeing so far some of the guys that he's drafted show some promise. So maybe we feel a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, it's very early in his tenure to go too grand with anything, but yeah, it's like you said. I mean, you can just really reshape your entire team. Felt.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking about because the I know most of the people, like I was telling Lakina before we got on, is a lot of people are up in arms, and they always are in every sport when it comes to draft picks. But I think when you're doing a rebuild and you want to get everything right, you're gonna have to have a good amount of draft picks. And Lakina made a good point also before too, is the fact that that you with those draft picks, you're not gonna keep all of them, and you can use them to trade for other players. And I think that that's why you need the draft capital. I think that's why the Bears did this type of move. And yeah, and also the way I see it too is, I was kind of in the middle too, just kind of when I heard about this, and I was like, hey, I don't know if it's a good move, whatever. But ultimately, I think it'll be a good move because of what they got back, but also because the Bears had already ruined their relationship to what it seemed like with Roquan. Obviously, when they try to do the trade talks, he doesn't have an agent, so they spoke directly to Roquan, and it just didn't go well. So I thought, you know what, if we're not going to be able to re-sign him, then you might as well just trade him. But yeah, I do still see the negative look on it just because of the fact that how young he is and how good he is. And a lot of people have said, I've read a couple pieces by some reporters saying that the Bears are just going to go out there, try to sign someone or trade for someone just like him. So, yeah, it's going to be, I'm sure some people are going to be getting used to this one. Another thing I wanted to ask you guys was, do you guys think this is going to lead to more deals? I know I asked Ryan this over the weekend in the Bears pregame and postgame, but do you guys think, we'll start with you, Lakeena, more players going to come off the board after this move?
Well, I've seen some rumors that, this is like, Bears, Twitter, and but some people said, hey, let's try to trade Eddie Jackson,
Mm.
try to get something for him, or even I've heard some people say maybe David Montgomery, could he be on the trading block? He's an electrifying running back, and they're a dime a dozen. I'm sure there are a lot of teams, especially contending teams that would love to have him in their backfield. So I wouldn't be surprised if Coles doesn't pull off another move or two before the deadline tomorrow afternoon, but yeah, it's really up to him. But the it's gonna suck before it gets better, I guess. So I guess it's probably some Bears fans have to get ready for that.
Yeah, I was totally wrong about that. Saul was not thinking that the Bears were going to make a move, and lo and behold, they traded maybe their biggest, most impactful person off of their roster that you could do outside of what, Justin Fields or something like that. So much more they're willing to deal. I'm starting to wonder with all this activity, supposedly, if they're looking to buy rather than sell anyone else. But Eddie Jackson, Dave Montgomery, those are names that come to mind if you're trying to think of anybody off the roster of value that you can kind of trade off. But I do want to just mention too, Saul, you made a great point with Roquan where, he was like the Bears kind of soured the relationship for him. And I think that cut both ways, where the Bears were soured from Roquan. And maybe
Mhm.
that's a bigger part to this trade than all of us maybe thought could happen at the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it definitely went both ways. I think the way that he handled it, the way in the press conference, and you just saw the way he took the situation. Yeah, it probably could have gone better both ways. The last thing I wanted to ask you guys too is with this deal and just like the deals that have happened, whether it be Quinn or the Smith deal, and the abundance of draft and cap space in general. What do you think this means, or how does this spell into the offseason? Do you think this seeing these deals, do you guys think that this bodes well for the offseason in the sense of a positive way? Or and because the way you look, I was telling Lakina as well, was that when I saw this deal, it's gutsy, but I think that it's still, I do still want to see that risk taking type of move from the general manager, Ryan Poles. So yeah, we'll start with you, Lakina. What do you think, and how does this bode for the offseason in your mind?
It's really all going to depend on what's going to be the game plan. Do you take some of those picks, perhaps maybe try to get maybe a top star that might be, quote unquote disgruntled? Do you perhaps maybe, is Fields, I know some people don't want to hear this, and he has improved a lot in the last few weeks. Is Fields their guy? Like if he is, then okay, fine. He's still playing in his style, but you're gonna have to sign him at some point. If not, do you trade him and try to perhaps maybe get even more, capital, or get a top star back? So there are a lot of ways that this could go for Paul. This is going to be his first big test in the off season, so it really is going to depend on what he's looking for, what's going to be, his thinking for the future. Because you got Bryce Young, you got, I think Max Dugan is going to be eligible for to get it, come through the draft. So if he wants to, so yeah, it's sort of one of those things where you just gotta. It's all we really. I wish we could be, in Ryan Poles' brain right now and see what's he thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think like in terms of some of the other players, like Dave Montgomery, I don't expect back after his rookie deal ends. I think Ryan Poles is just going to move on to somebody else. Probably the same thing's going to happen with Eddie Jackson if he's not traded. Maybe they'll try to bring him back on a more team friendly deal. But overall, I think Lakeena, you hit it. The big question is what is the evaluation of number one? Because your off season is going to be about building around a rookie quarterback or building around him. And depending on where you are in the draft, depending on how aggressive you're trying to be with your draft capital, with your cap space to either help a rookie or him, it's going to dictate a lot of these decision making when it comes to personnel and what they do in this off season. If the trend continues with Fields, I think you have to build around him just based on if you're just talking prospect level, what prospect in this draft are you going to feel more comfortable than Justin Fields? And I'm not talking about just quarterbacking, but toughness, leadership, things that we have seen easily answered from him. We do need to see more of the quarterbacking answered. So obviously it still depends how this season goes, but if he continues to progress in a way that he has over the last few weeks, I think all of us want to see him with an offensive line, with some guys that can go up and get it at that number one or number two receiver spot. Maybe put Darnell Mooney at number three, where he's probably his best self type thing, and watch this team really roll at that point. So it's just going to come down to what does Poles think of Justin Fields?
Yeah, no, that's true, and I've seen a lot of people actually say that with this, with this trade, it does kind of solidify their trust in Justin Fields. Not sure, how I see that, but it is going to be fascinating to see what the Bears do in the offseason, of the decision they make, and that what they're going to do with Fields and the offensive line, because there's plenty, there's probably going to be plenty of decisions to make, and who knows, because the way I was looking at it too was that they have a lot of cap space, they have a lot of draft picks, but not everything's going to be solved this offseason. I think a lot of people see it that way. A lot of people are like talking about it that way, that, hey, look, they have a lot of cap space going into 2023, but that's not really, the way that I assume they're going to do things. So we'll see, but plenty to talk about for sure, and we'll get more into it in the pre and post and stuff this weekend. But I want to thank Lakeena McGee for joining us from Sports Zone Chicago, and also Ryan Bukovetsky. Thanks for joining me, guys, on this Halloween night.
Thanks so much,
No
Saul.
problem, Paul.
All right, guys, take it easy.